You know something funny? So I got my 100,000 mile checkup done. And I could do it myself, but I get it done at a dealership because I don't care. A few extra bucks to get it paid done. You know, I got my oil changed. And see, they marked my power steering fluid full. That's interesting. I literally have fluid pouring out of my pinion seal on my drive, you know, the drive shaft goes into the rear axle. And I did mark that. I marked all my tires as great. Marked my brakes as great. My brakes are pretty much 1% in the front. That's funny. A couple other mistakes with this thing too, so. Man, I don't know. This whole thing with dealerships, man. I'm just kidding. I work at a dealership now. Guess what? I work at a dealership again. Let's go for a drive. Let's talk about that. And talk about the 100,000 mile 3.7 that I'm now driving. I just hit 100,000 miles in this car yesterday. On the way to getting a new job at a new Ford dealership. If you guys remember, it's been following the channel. I used to work at a Ford dealership. I worked at Chrysler for about 8 years, and then I worked at Ford for about a year as a service advisor in the service department. If you don't know what that is, it's when you go in for service, it's the guy that talks to you and presents work to you, gives you a quote, calls you when the car is done, deals with the mechanic, works on getting your car fixed. Deals with all your warranty bullshit, gets your warranty claims approved, anything that you need done in a dealership service department, you're going to go through your service advisor for. So that's my job. So it's a really good paying job. The last dealership I was at didn't really work out very well. I just didn't get along with the manager so well, and had a couple beefs with some customer surveys that I didn't agree with. So not to get too much into detail with all of it, but it just didn't end up working out very well. So I got a job offer from the general manager that the dealership I used to work at. I happened to run into him when I was getting gas one day, just recently. He offered me a job. So yeah, I went in, I interviewed yesterday, and I was offered the job right on the spot. So I will be back working at Ford again, which I'm kind of glad about, because I enjoy working with Ford products, obviously. I enjoy driving them too. But it's a long drive from work. It's about a good 45-50 minutes every day, and I'm not used to that because most jobs I've had have always been like 5-10 minutes away from my house, so that's something to get used to. But again, I'm happy about it. So yeah, that being said, I took my car in for a oil change the other day because it was like way overdue, and hit 100,000 miles. That's what we're going to talk about in this video. What issues have I had with this car, and my 100,000 mile review of this car, where it stands right now, what things I've replaced, what I've had to do to it, some recommended maintenance for you guys at 100,000 miles. We'll talk about that as well too in this video. And I'll talk about boosting or putting forced induction on a 100,000 mile car and if it's worth it or not. So stay tuned. We'll talk about all of that. In this video. Stay tuned. Man, traffic really blows over here, let me tell you. Especially at 6 o'clock. So, what's the deal with this car? What's been going on? 100,000 miles. What's wrong with it? Well, there's not really a lot of things wrong with it. Since I had the car, I bought the car about 63,000 miles. And when I bought it, everything was pretty good. I didn't really have any issues until about 13 or 14,000 miles ago, I think. I may have to backtrack a little bit because I don't remember all this very well, but yeah, about 14,000 miles ago, the water pump finally went out at like 86,000 miles. My math is terrible today. I haven't, there's no coffee in the center console here, so you can see why that happens. So about 86,000 miles, my water pump went out. If you guys are approaching 100,000 miles and it hasn't gone out yet, keep your eye out for it because it's going to happen. Happens to everybody. Happens to the best of us. Some people have had water pumps go out at 20, 25, 30,000. Some people have had to go out at 60. Some people have had to go out at like 80. If it hasn't gone out by 85 to 90, keep your damn fingers crossed because it is on its way out. Let me tell you right now. There's also a TSB when you get the water pump done to have the check valve replaced in the hose going to the water pump, I believe. I don't remember exactly. There is a file for it, which I'll try and find and link under this video in the description. If you guys that are interested, if you end up doing a water pump, it's a good idea because it'll prevent the new water pump from leaking. Some say it's what causes the original water pump to leak is this bad check valve, which you should get replaced. So that's one thing to consider when it comes to the water pump. Another issue I do have with this car right now is the pinion seal is leaking, as I mentioned earlier. It's been leaking for a while, and I had my brakes done just recently too. I'm on factory brakes, factory front brakes, factory rear brakes, and I just hit 100,000 miles, but I just had the rear brakes replaced because they were metal on metal. They were getting a little grindy. They're working great so far. Holy fuck, this is a lot of traffic. God damn. I can't even make a right turn. Alright, anyways. I can't, finally, fuck, that took long enough. So back brakes had to be done, the water pump had to be done, the pinion seal's leaking, and I'm 100,000 miles. What else? Oh, this is an MT82 car, as you guys probably already know and just saw. I am on the stock flywheel and clutch at 100,000 miles. It's pretty amazing. And I mean, I haven't raced this thing as much as I did the first 3.7 I had, but I still beat the heck out of this car. Literally beat the shit out of this car, and you guys can see the way I drive it. I drive it casually a lot of times, but I do drive it pretty crazy sometimes too. I've given this thing a lot of no lift shifts, a lot, and the clutch, the flywheel, it still shifts great. Of course, it's MT82, so it's gonna miss shifts every now and then. I mean, you put the fucking Randy Popes in here, and you're still gonna miss the shift. You know, it's the way the MT82 is. But I don't really have any complaints with it as far as that goes. That's my only complaint, I guess. But overall, those are really the only problems I've had with this car. I've owned it since 63,000 miles, and it's now got over 100,000. Everything else is good on this car, except for the paint. I've talked about the paint before. The paint's a really big issue. It's peeling in like 4 different spots, which is a whole nother fucking issue. I didn't want to think about it right now because it's just going to make me depressed. I got to look at it every time I walk up to the right side of my car. Besides that, mechanically, electrically, this car has no issues. Everything works still. All the lights work, all the switches work. The air conditioning still blows ice cold. The engine is in great shape. All that stuff is great. I have not had any electrical problems or anything else. I remember my 07 Mustang that I had. That thing had a boatload of electrical issues. There were so many problems with that car, and it's because those things are notorious for water leaking in under the cowl and getting into the junction box, which is in the passenger side kick panel, and it would just screw with everything in there. And that thing the lights would turn on by itself when it was just sitting there. I would come into a dead battery because like the lights were on all night. It's all because it's like shorting out and it's making itself do that. Like that thing was possessed, like seriously. And thankfully, these things don't really have those issues, so you don't have to worry about that. So if you're looking at buying a high mileage 3.7 liter, I would recommend it, man. You can get them for dirt cheap now. I mean, $5,000-$6,000 for 100,000 mile 3.7, and it's going to last you another 150,000 miles. I mean, I've talked to people in the Facebook groups that have 150, 200, 250,000 miles in their cars, and those things are still running great. So there's absolutely no reason you shouldn't buy a high mileage 3.7, especially for the price nowadays and how cheap mods are, how cheap you can get these things to go fast for just buying used parts or buying, just whatever you want to do. I mean, turbo kits aren't cheap, but if you want to add a few extra horsepower and run 12s and a quarter mile, I explained how to do it in the last video. I think I did at least, for around $1,000. Yeah, that's not bad at all. I'll be right back. There's something else we covered in this video too, which was maintenance at about 100,000 miles. These cars don't have to have the timing chains changed out like some cars do. 100,000 miles, probably a good idea if you haven't done your differential fluid yet to change the differential fluid. Oil change, obviously. But speaking of oil, something we used to recommend at the last dealership I worked at was an engine oil flush. And at around 100,000 miles, it's not a bad thing to consider. If you have some extra money later on, I'm not saying you have to do it, but it will not hurt. Just one thing to consider. 100,000 mile spark plugs in these cars also. So if you guys, actually, I got this question like 3 times this last week, and it was, what spark plug should I use for this car? First of all, you change them. You can go up to 100,000 miles to what they're rated for. I changed mine as soon as I bought the car, about 64,000 miles, and I just used the OEM Motorcraft plugs because that's what is recommended from Ford, and that's what works fine. They've done just fine for my cars. No need to spend a whole bunch of extra money and get the gold diamond plated or iridium extra rocket booster something, octane something, whatever the hell they call spark plugs nowadays. Just get the OEM shit for it, because it will do you just fine. You don't have to go crazy with that stuff. That's actually a good time too to consider ported intake manifolds, because you have to take out the top intake to change out the plugs on these cars. So if you want to get ported intakes and you're thinking about changing your spark plugs, do them at the same time, because it will save you on labor. Definitely something else to consider as far as that goes. I mean, besides that, these cars don't really have too much other maintenance. I did a whole V6 Mustang maintenance video. If you guys want to check that out, I'll leave a link in the description to that. Like I said, trans fluid should be around 60,000 miles in automatics. Manuals, you actually don't have to change trans fluid to 150,000. But if you want better, smoother shifting, I do recommend changing the fluid out with what's called a Calimer Cocktail mix. I will also leave a link in the description for that. If you guys want to change your trans fluid, that's the most recommended trans fluid to go with in this car, an MT82. Boosting. Boosting a 3.7, or even putting nitrous on a 3.7 liter. I feel like it's too dark in here for this video at this point. Boosting a 3.7 liter. Should you do it with 100,000 miles? Should you put nitrous on a 100,000 mile 3.7? I think the whole beginning of this video should give you hope and let you know already without me telling you that you can easily, because these things will last 150 to 250,000 miles with no problems. A great example, Terry and Amanda's car, the TB built Ghost, the white Mustang. I'm sure you guys have seen it before on my channel. If you haven't, then you're probably not subscribed, and you need to be subscribed. Go through some of my older videos because there's a lot of great content on there. That car had about a 225 shot sprayed through it so many times. Not all the time, it was mostly on a 150 shot, but the car had over 200,000 miles and it still runs to this day. So let that sink in a little bit. These cars love nitrous as long as it's tuned properly, as long as you have a progressive controller. These cars love boost as long as it's tuned properly. We've never really seen things blow up from issues that were caused directly by forced induction. It's always something else. You know, it's always either a heat issue or an oil issue or a tuning issue or just too much boost or something like that, you know. But it's never the boost itself or the nitrous itself that's going to cause these issues. So I just want to reassure you guys that if you have a high mileage car and you still want to add a hell of a lot more power to it, do not be afraid, because not only that, engines, used engines like $600 or $700 for these cars. You can't go wrong. That's so cheap. That's so cheap. If you can afford a $5,000, $6,000 turbo kit, you can afford a $600 or $700 spare engine. Shit, just get one anyways when you get the turbo kit. Just have it sitting there because you know, in case it does blow up. That way you got one ready to go in. So that's going to be the end of the video. I wanted to talk about my 100,000 mile experience with this car, where I'm at right now, the issues I've had, boosting at 100,000 miles, and recommended maintenance at 100,000 miles. And I covered all that, I think, in this video. So we'll move on from here and figure out what the next video is going to be. I got to do some action. I think the next video is not going to be any talking. I'm just going to do some action, some driving, some shifting, some banging some fucking gears, man. That's going to be that.